Axel Drake never asked for visions that burned like fire in his mind, nor for memories that weren't his but clung to him like hungry shadows. In a world torn apart, where cities are just skeletons of a forgotten past and hope feels like a distant whisper, Axel survives as a relic hunter, risking it all in ruins eaten away by desolation. One night, during one of these dangerous expeditions, he finds something that shouldn't even exist: the fragment of the Eternal. An ancient artifact, cold to the touch, but glowing with a strange light, almost like it's carrying the weight of destiny itself. The moment his fingers touch the fragment, reality shatters. A wave of visions swallows him whole, images of an eternal fire, symbols dancing in a forgotten language, and a name whispered by the void itself: the flames of the Eternal. That whisper wasn't just a call, it was a warning. Disoriented, with his heart pounding like a war drum, Axel realizes this isn't just a random vision. It's an echo of something bigger, a living prophecy that ties him to a dark and inevitable fate. On his quest for answers, Axel crosses paths with Sarah Valen, a warrior with sharp eyes and scars that tell stories of long-lost battles, and Jaren Holt, a strategist with a past full of secrets and a mind as sharp as a blade. Together they form an unlikely trio, each carrying their own inner ruins, but united by an uncertain purpose. Sarah, with her quiet determination, seems to understand the weight Axel carries, while Jaren watches everything with a suspicious eye, unsure of the true nature of Axel's visions. It's Sarah who brings the first revelation. She speaks of an ancient prophecy, buried deep in forgotten tales, about a chosen one, someone destined to face the void. The prophecy doesn't speak of glory or victory. It speaks of sacrifice, of inevitable loss, and of an heir to a legacy as old as the world itself. Axel, reluctant to believe, can't shake the suffocating feeling that these visions are more personal than he's willing to admit. As they travel through devastated lands, every step of the group is followed by an eerie silence, like the world itself is holding its breath. Axel feels the weight of memories that aren't his, flashes of ancient battles and voices whispering about the ruin that's coming. The tension between them grows, especially when Jaren starts questioning whether Axel is really the hope they're looking for, or just a harbinger of destruction. One night, camping under a sky full of dead stars, Axel finally shares what he's seen in the visions. The flames of the Eternal aren't just a symbol of power. They're a prison. A weapon against the void, yes, but also a damnation for anyone who dares to wield them. Sarah listens in silence, her eyes heavy with the shadows of the past, while Jaren stays rigid, like every word is a blade pressed to his throat. The journey to the ruins of Valastra, where they hope to find answers, isn't just physical, it's a journey that drags each of their deepest fears to the surface. Axel begins to realize he can't escape what's coming. The visions grow stronger, more real, like time itself is bending around him. The name, the flames of the Eternal, echoes in his mind, louder and louder, like a war drum calling them to the inevitable. The tension explodes when Axel, in a moment of desperation, feels an ancient power surge through his veins. The earth trembles beneath his feet, and for a brief second, he sees not the world as it is, but as it was before the ruin, before the void. A memory that shouldn't be his, but pulses in his blood as a cruel reminder of what's at stake. Sarah, seeing what Axel might become, is torn between protecting him and fearing him. Jaren, on the other hand, begins to make plans, already considering what to do if Axel loses control. The shadows of the prophecy loom over them like a suffocating veil, and each of them knows the real challenge is yet to come. The questions keep piling up. Will Axel be the key to redemption or just a new echo of destruction? The relentless pull of fate keeps pushing forward, dragging the trio towards Valastra, where ancient secrets wait to be revealed. Axel feels, deep in his soul, that the fragment of the Eternal wasn't an accident. It was a call. And maybe the real question isn't what he has to do, but what he's willing to sacrifice when the time comes. The sky seemed to weigh down on Axel Drake as he left the ruins behind, each step echoing the weight of a destiny he barely began to understand. The feeling of being watched grew stronger with every mile, as if invisible shadows were moving at the edges of his vision. The wind sliced through the silence with whispers that carried fragments of old voices, words that made no sense but somehow felt dangerously familiar. This place wasn't just a graveyard of stone and memory, it was an open wound on the world, a grim reminder of what the void had left behind. Axel clenched the medallion he just discovered, feeling its cold surface pulse lightly against his skin, like something inside him was still alive. The terrain shifted before his tired eyes, from a sea of broken stone to a winding gorge that seemed to swallow the light. Each step reverberated through the narrow space, and the rock walls seemed to close in as if wanting to trap him there. It was then that he heard the first real sound since leaving the ruins, an echo of metal against stone. Tension filled him, and his hand instinctively went to the blade at his belt. The figure emerging from the darkness seemed as exhausted as he was, but her eyes burned with raw determination. Sarah Valen, the warrior marked by loss, now stood before him, her gaze hard and her posture that of someone who had survived the worst the world could offer. Sarah didn't speak at first, merely watching Axel with an evaluating stare. The scar on her jaw appeared deeper under the dim light, a silent reminder of old battles. Finally, she broke the silence with a hoarse voice, laden with distrust. She didn't trust him, not yet. But something about the medallion in his hand caught her attention, making her expression harden even more. Before Axel could say anything, she lunged forward, her hand closing around the medallion with unexpected strength. The words that left her mouth were more a warning than a question. "Do you know what you carry there, Drake?" He didn't know the full answer, but in that moment he realized she knew more than she let on. The wind intensified, bringing with it a metallic scent of a storm. Sarah released the medallion, but her eyes never left his. Axel felt a strange mixture of relief and discomfort, as if there was much more to this woman's story than met the eye. With a brief nod, she started walking through the ravine, signaling that he should follow. The path was narrow, and each step seemed to take them deeper into a suffocating darkness. Axel knew he was getting involved in something bigger than he could imagine, and the mere fact that Sarah was there indicated that the pieces of this puzzle were starting to fall into place in a dangerous way. As they moved forward, Axel felt the visions return, stronger than ever. Fragments of a past that wasn't his, distorted voices and shadows in human forms. He saw flashes of a tower in ruins, a symbol etched into an ancient door, and a hooded figure watching him from afar. Each step seemed to pull him closer to those fragmented memories, as if the void itself were trying to whisper forbidden secrets in his ears. Sarah noticed his hesitation but said nothing. Perhaps she understood the weight he carried. Perhaps she knew that sometimes silence was the only possible response to such a crushing burden. Suddenly, the ravine opened into a hidden clearing, surrounded by twisted trees that seemed to have been burned from the inside out. In the center, a black stone stood, ancient symbols carved into its surface, pulsing with a faint and threatening light. Sarah stopped and turned to Axel, her expression one of pure seriousness. "This is the dark marker," she said, her voice low. "They say those who get too close can hear the echoes of the void." Axel felt a shiver run up his spine as he approached the stone, the medallion against his chest vibrating with an unsettling intensity. It was as if the void itself was awakening, hungry and impatient. The moment Axel touched the surface of the stone, a wave of energy hit him with brutal force. His vision darkened for a moment, and he found himself in a place that couldn't possibly be real. An endless field of ruins, a sky cracked by purple lightning, and in the center of it all, a figure cloaked in pure shadows. He couldn't see a face, but those eyes burning with a deep red seemed to pierce his soul. The voice that echoed in his mind wasn't made of words but pure instinct and terror. When he recoiled, gasping for air, Sarah was already by his side, holding him firmly as if she knew exactly what he had seen. Axel's breath was ragged, and he felt drained as if part of his essence had been forcibly ripped away. Sarah didn't ask anything, just nodded with a look that said everything. She had been through this before. The sky above them seemed darker now, as if their presence had awakened something that should have remained dormant. The medallion burned against his chest, a cruel reminder that the path ahead would be far darker than he could ever imagine. And yet, there was a newfound determination in his eyes. If the void wanted to whisper, he would listen and face whatever came. Sarah finally spoke in a softer tone, but still laden with gravity. "The void. It feeds on fear, on the memories we try to forget. But it also holds secrets we need to uncover if we're to have any chance." Axel nodded slowly, feeling the weight of each word. The path they were walking wasn't just a journey through devastated lands, it was a descent into the darkest depths of their very being. And with each step, he knew he was drawing closer to the true heart of the void, where the oldest secrets and the deepest terrors awaited. Their adventure was far from over. In fact, it had barely begun. Axel felt a presence in the distance, a shadow watching him from afar. The ruins before him were imposing, like a grim reminder of what had been lost. Sarah Valen, his companion on this journey, was by his side, her eyes fixed on those broken walls. They had already faced many horrors together, but nothing seemed to compare to what was unfolding before them. Something was about to happen, a revelation that would change everything. Axel still didn't know what it was, but deep within his soul, he felt that the key to understanding the visions and the void was there, somewhere in the depths of this ancient fortress. The tension in the air was palpable. The stone walls echoed with the sound of footsteps that couldn't be seen, as if the past itself were moving through the shadows rising from the ashes. Sarah stepped up to Axel, tapping his shoulder. "You think we're ready for this?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. Axel didn't answer right away. He knew nothing could prepare him for what was coming. The visions that had haunted him the last few nights were getting stronger, and the void felt more real with each passing day. Axel took a step forward, determined. "We don't have a choice," he said, his voice full of quiet resolve. He knew that what they were after could either be the answer or the end, but it was a risk they had to take. In the distance, a rusty metal door stood out, guarded by ancient symbols Axel couldn't understand but felt deeply connected to. It was like it was speaking directly to his soul. He couldn't hesitate. Not now. Sarah followed him wordlessly. She felt the same urgency, the need to figure out what was happening, but she couldn't deny the fear that crept in. The void was closing in, and they had no idea what awaited them behind those walls. Once inside, the shadows deepened. The sound of their boots echoed, and somewhere far off, Axel could swear he heard a whisper, a voice calling his name. The echo of something ancient. "You feel that?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. Axel nodded without looking at her. The weight of the silence was crushing. They weren't alone anymore. Something else had awoken. Something was waiting for them. The door creaked as Axel pushed it open, revealing a vast hall lit only by a faint light that seemed to come from nowhere. On the walls, ancient carvings moved as if alive. "Here we are," Axel said, his tone full of revelation. But before he could take another step, a shadow darted quickly between the stones, as silent as the night itself. Sarah stepped back instinctively, but Axel stayed still. He knew they were being watched. Whatever it was, it knew they weren't alone. The feeling of being hunted intensified, and Axel felt like every breath was becoming harder to take. The voice in his head, once vague, was now clearer. It was urging him to make a choice. But which choice? And what did it mean for their mission? "We're here to uncover a secret," Axel said, more to himself than to Sarah. "But are we ready to know the truth?" As he spoke, a hooded figure emerged from the shadows. Its eyes gleamed with an intensity that seemed to pierce the darkness. Axel braced for the worst, but then the figure spoke, its voice echoing like a distant omen. "You've come closer than you think, Axel Drake. But you're still far from uncovering the truth." The echo of those words reverberated through the hall, and the tension grew thicker. Axel's journey was about to take an unexpected turn, and he knew that with every step, the void was getting closer. What exactly was the void? What did it have to do with Axel and his visions? It was a truth they needed to uncover, but it was clear the price would be steep. The shadow vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Axel and Sarah alone but carrying an immense weight on their shoulders. The silence now felt even thicker, more oppressive, as if the very space around them was swallowing them whole. The hall was steeped in a dense silence, broken only by Axel and Sarah's breathing. The atmosphere seemed to get heavier with each passing second, as if the walls themselves were pressing in on them. The hooded figure had disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind a lingering tension in the air. Axel could feel the weight of its words echoing in his mind, a subtle yet clear threat. "You're closer than you think." But what did that mean? What was Axel really after? He looked at Sarah, who was staring at him, waiting for an answer he didn't have yet. Their mission had never been simple, but now, with this new message, everything felt more confusing, more murky. The void was closing in, and the answers they were seeking were slipping further away with each step. "Let's keep going," Axel said, trying to find some confidence in his words. He knew there was no turning back. They had come this far, and the truth, no matter how painful, was within reach. Sarah didn't say anything, but her look conveyed a silent understanding. They both knew the path ahead was risky, but there was no turning back now. They crossed the hall, the symbols on the walls seeming to move as they got closer. The dim lights reflected off the carvings, creating images that shifted into shadows, human figures, and twisted creatures, a reflection of something forgotten. The space was alive, but not in a healthy way. It was like it had been corroded, lost in time. And as they moved forward, Axel couldn't shake the growing feeling that they were being watched. Not just by the hooded figure, but by something bigger, something deeper. The void. In the center of the room, a massive stone structure stood tall, imposing. It was some sort of altar, covered in moss and wear marks, as if it had been abandoned for centuries. But there was a strange energy coming from it. Axel approached cautiously, feeling the tension build with every step. Axel muttered. "This is what we've been looking for." Sarah stepped up next to him, her gaze sharp. "What is it? What did we find, Axel?" He touched the surface of the stone, feeling a subtle vibration, like the structure itself was alive, pulsing in response to his presence. "The key," Axel said, more to himself than to Sarah. "This is the key." A chill ran down his spine as he spoke. It felt like they were at a point of no return. But before he could think too much about it, a deep crack appeared in the stone structure. It slowly opened, revealing a hidden passage deep within the fortress. Axel couldn't see what was inside, but he knew it was the only way forward. "Let's go," Axel said, making the decision for both him and Sarah. No turning back now. But before they could enter the passage, a thunderous noise filled the space, and the door they had entered through slammed shut with a bang, trapping them inside. The room lit up for a second, and a wave of energy enveloped them. Axel felt a sharp pain in his head, as if he was being pulled to some distant place. "Something's not right," Sarah said, tense. "Where are we being pulled to?" Axel didn't know how to answer. He didn't have the answers, but something deep inside told him the truth they were searching for was closer than they realized. And at the same time, the void was closing in, its claws ready to swallow everything. As the passage expanded ahead of them, the sound of something breaking echoed off the walls. An ancient relic, lost to time, had awoken. And Axel knew that whatever was in there would lead him to the greatest challenge of his life. "It's okay. We made it this far. Whatever comes next, we face it together," Axel said, trying to reassure Sarah. But inside, he knew this journey still held more mysteries, and the truth was about to be revealed in an unexpected way. As they neared the entrance of the passage, a sense of familiarity washed over Axel, like he had been here before. But how was that possible? What was he forgetting? The last thing Axel saw before stepping into the darkness was a gleam in his own eyes. Something inside him had awakened. Something that connected him to whatever they were about to find. Something he couldn't ignore. What will Axel find when he crosses the secret passage? What else is at stake? The answers are about to be revealed, but is he ready for the truth? The next step in his journey will be the hardest of all. Axel and Sarah moved forward through the passage, their figures casting shadows that danced on the walls, lit by a faint glow that seemed to come from the depths of the path. The air felt thicker here, as if something was watching them with every step. Axel's visions were more intense now, the images overlapping, like flashes from a distant past that he still couldn't fully understand. The void was closing in, like an invisible but relentless threat, ready to consume everything Axel knew. The sound of their boots echoed off the stone walls, and every step seemed to take them deeper into a labyrinth of forgotten secrets. As they walked, Axel felt something warm stirring inside him, an energy beginning to flow through his bones, an ancient power he didn't even know he had. The words of the hooded figure still echoed in his mind. "You're closer than you think." Then the passage widened, revealing a massive room, adorned with ancient relics and inscriptions that seemed to tell a story lost to time. Axel stopped at the threshold of the room, his eyes scanning the place. In the center, a large sphere floated, pulsing with a golden light that seemed to have no source. It was like time itself was being distorted around it. The feeling of familiarity Axel had experienced earlier intensified, almost suffocating. It was as if he had lived this moment before, or maybe as if this moment had been waiting for him. "This is impossible," Sarah whispered, standing beside him. "What is this?" Axel had no words. He felt, with every fiber of his being, that the answer was right there, the key to everything. It was the convergence point between the Axel was standing between the void and the resurgence of something bigger. He stepped closer to the sphere, reaching out, feeling this pull that was almost impossible to resist. Time seemed to freeze, the air thick with the anticipation of what was about to happen. As soon as his hand touched the sphere, a surge of energy hit him, making his vision blur. Images from a distant past, a time when he was someone else, overwhelmed his mind. He saw himself in another life as an ancient being, powerful, burdened with responsibility. He saw the guardians, the protectors of the world, who had fallen to the forces of the void, leaving the world vulnerable to destruction. Axel dropped to his knees, the visions crushing him. He knew what he had to do, but the weight of the truth almost broke him. He wasn't just a relic hunter. He was the last descendant of a lost bloodline, a bloodline destined to restore balance and prevent the void from completely returning. He was the key to sealing everyone's fate. "Sir, I'm the last guardian," Axel said, his voice filled with disbelief. "I'm the only one who can stop it all from being consumed." Sarah, watching him with a mix of surprise and understanding, moved closer and placed her hand on his shoulder. "So what do we do now? The void's still coming. Can you take it on alone?" Axel stood up, his strength renewed by the revelation. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. Through his visions, he had understood that the void wasn't just something to be defeated. It was a force, a corruption of the very balance of the world. And to fight it, he would need more than just physical strength. He would need sacrifice, the unity of the guardians, and the ancient wisdom that came before them. "I'm not doing this alone," Axel said, his gaze firm. "But the battle won't be easy. The truth we're seeking isn't just about beating the void. It's about sticking together, understanding that every sacrifice we make now, every choice, brings us closer to balance. We'll seal what needs to be sealed." As Axel spoke those words, the sphere gleamed brightly, and the whole room began to shake. Axel felt a weight on his chest, like time itself was collapsing in on him. He knew this was the pivotal moment, the point where everything would change. "It's time," Axel said mostly to himself. "Time to restore what was lost." With one last look at Sarah, he moved toward the center of the room, where the sphere was starting to open. The golden light spilling from it spread throughout the room, and Axel felt an immense power flooding into him. The void, with all its darkness, was getting closer. But now, Axel knew he was ready to face it. The light from the sphere expanded like a wave of energy, lighting up the whole room. Axel felt his body fill with a force as ancient as the world itself, and in his heart, a responsibility he never imagined carrying. He knew that by making this decision, the future would never be the same, and the price to be paid would be higher than he could ever imagine. But what did sacrifice really mean? He remembered the words of the hooded figure, the shadows that had followed him from the start of this journey. "You're closer than you think." He wasn't alone. The choices he'd made, the doubts he'd had, and the challenges he'd faced, all of them had led him here. The truth he was after wasn't just about power or a relic. It was about accepting who he truly was, the last guardian. As he placed his hands on the sphere, Axel felt a current of ancient wisdom flowing through him. Every part of his being was filled with an understanding of what was needed to restore balance. But at the same time, an indescribable pain shot through him, as if he was being torn apart. It was the sacrifice, the choice he was making to ensure the void wouldn't take everything he knew. Sarah stood by his side, resolute, silent, but her look said everything. She knew there was no turning back. Together they had come this far, but what came next would be the true test of their destiny. The void was closing in and time was running out. The ground began to shake violently, and the sphere let out a metallic screech, as if the earth itself was protesting. Axel felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he didn't step back. He knew the battle wasn't just about defeating the darkness. It was about unity, understanding that the real power came from every choice made, every sacrifice accepted, every tear shed. The true power was in those who, despite the fear, kept fighting, kept searching, kept believing. As the sphere released its energy, an explosion of light filled the room, and Axel found himself enveloped in a golden mist. He closed his eyes, feeling a sudden peace flood his heart. The voices of the past, the shadows of the future, everything seemed to come together in one single moment of clarity. When the light finally faded, the room was silent. The void still hung in the air, but it wasn't the same. Something had changed. Something deep. Axel felt like the battle was far from over, but he knew he was more ready than ever before. He looked over at Sarah and she smiled at him, a smile that said more than 1,000 words could ever express. Together, they had faced the echoes of forgetfulness and awakened something that even the void couldn't erase. Axel had no idea what the future would bring, but now he knew that the real meaning of his journey was what he'd choose to do with what was left. What he would become. What he could save. With that new perspective, he took a step towards the horizon, ready to face whatever came his way. The real destiny was still ahead of him. If you like this story, don't forget to drop a comment, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more stories like this. I'll see you in the next video.